Welcome to a JJ Dillon podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Paz, and with me, as always, is the star of the show, two-time Hall of Famer, the leader of the legendary Four Horsemen, the second greatest manager of all time. Of course, he is a former WWF and WCW executive, James J. Dillon. JJ, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great, and just engrossed in the holiday spirit. I have my Christmas tree up here in my residence, and as I go out and move around, I see a lot of evidence of a lot of Christmas lights, and it's a joyous time of the year and a time to reflect on the past year and all the things that we have to be thankful for. Whether it's where you're employed or whether it's more personal, like your family or whatever, and at the same time look forward to the dawn of a new year and a new challenge.
Absolutely. And kind of before we do get started, I do want to kind of bring up something, and all the fans obviously will want to pay attention to this, and I'll kind of say my piece, and then you kind of, follow up with and make sure I'm nailing everything correctly. But as of January 1st, JJ will be taking a hiatus from the wrestling business. We'll be taking somewhat of a break from wrestling, and the show will actually be the second to last show, and then next week will actually be the last show for the time being for the JJ Dillon podcast. Do I have that all pretty much correct, JJ?
Yeah, that's it, and I'm glad you phrased it that way. And we've talked privately, and the last thing I wanted was to have any rumors started that maybe there's something wrong, or that there's something that has offended me and I'm upset about something. It's not that. Or I don't want rumors to start that, maybe he's got some kind of an illness, and that's not it either. It's just I've been doing this for a while. I enjoy doing it, and as I've told you so many times, you've made it easy for me. And it's just as the year winds down, I've got some new challenges for the first of the year, and I'm going to say take a hiatus. Now, hiatus leaves an open end. Hiatus could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, yet to be determined. And one of the things is I've been in touch with Tony Villano, who was, I first met him through Georgie Animal Steel. Tony had the New York Boxing Hall of Fame, and through conversation with the late George Steele, was surprised to hear that there was not, at that point, a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And so Tony Villano, several months later, saw George and had an envelope that he handed to him, and George said, "What's that?" And he said, "Open it." And he said, "It's the charter for establishing a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame." So Tony Villano, a lot of people talked about it. Tony made it happen. He was based out of Albany, New York, and the hall actually moved to Texas and has a permanent home there with a ring from Madison Square Garden. A lot of people from the industry, myself included, have donated like ring gear for display and what have you. And Tony had been employed and had a very, very busy schedule, and he's retired and kind of misses maybe being more hands-on, and so he is establishing, as of the first of the year, what he's calling the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. This will not be in competition with the Hall of Fame that continues in Texas, and that I'm still greatly supportive of, but I will be on the board of the new International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame that will debut in the first of the year, based out of Albany, New York. So I'm looking forward to that, and at this point there's just a lot of discussion. It's kind of in Tony's hands, and I know, based on experience for the first time working with Tony, it's going to be really great. Looking for bigger and better things.
Excellent. Good stuff, and love to clear those rumors out of the way, because you never know what people might say, he's sick, or he's ill, or he whatever.
That should help to spell it, because as you and I have talked, I've been doing this podcast and have thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been great working with you. You've made it easy for me. But as of the first of the year, I do want to take a hiatus. Hiatus leaves an open end as to when I might resume. So as it stands now, next week would be our final episode for a period of time, and I will be concentrating some of my energy of working with Tony Villano on the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame that will be again based back in out of Albany, New York. So I will have that, and I'm still just as passionate. I've always been about the wrestling business. I've recently talked to Luke Williams, Sweet William, and he has put together an event up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which was a special spot for me, where I kind of got my break after starting in the Carolinas, and went up there and got the big push. And so up in the Maritimes is a special place for me, and he's put together, and I don't want to jump ahead of whatever announcement he's making, but since next week will be maybe my last chance to talk for a little while, I've committed to a weekend of May 8th and 9th, a Friday and a Saturday up in Halifax, and I'm sure there will be a lot of other people besides myself, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to Canada and seeing a lot of friends and a lot of fans that are up there, and of course being totally supportive of Tony Villano as he's putting together the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I will be on the board of directors to add my support. And when he does the formal announcement, I will go up there and be present for it. So I just don't want any confusion as to whether I'm alienating myself from the pro wrestling world. It's been an important part of my life for over half a century. I've got 2 Hall of Fame rings that I'm incredibly proud of, and it's just things happen in life and change, and I just wanted to dispel any rumors that might start that that I may have an illness or something, which is not true. Life is good for me, and it's just that sometimes change is good, and that's not to say that at some point I would not come back in and once again be involved with what is being called the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Right, and we were talking off air a little bit. We got some other things kind of cooking for down in the future. We'll get to that at a later date and time, but we got some other stuff cooking for sure, which is great. But you're mentioning the International Hall of Fame. You're mentioning your 2 Hall of Fame rings, and we're talking about the Hall of Fame. So I think it's a perfect time today to talk about 2012 and the WWE Hall of Fame down in Miami, Florida. Obviously a part of WrestleMania weekend, which was WrestleMania 28 down there. So great memory, obviously, of the Hall of Fame and that class. But what's kind of the first thing that comes to your mind when I say WWE Hall of Fame, class 2012, the 4 Horsemen?
Yeah, well, it was the 4 Horsemen that were actually inducted, and of course, as the leader of the 4 Horsemen, I was there, as was, of course, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Barry Windham. So it was a great weekend in Miami. The WrestleMania event that year in 2012 was at the big stadium in Miami that had 60,000-70,000 people there, and I sometimes in the middle of the night will wake up and just walking out with the other guys and looking up and just seeing a stadium just full, wall to wall with people, and the people that were closest to the ends, I could actually, physically, see the faces and the hand gestures of the 4 fingers, a symbol of excellence. I get goosebumps thinking about that. So it was an incredible weekend and something that I'm very, very proud of.
When you actually are being a part of the Hall of Fame, obviously you mentioned Tully, Flair, Barry, and Arn are going to be there, and that's probably a lot of people's favorite group. My favorite grouping of the Horsemen, probably up there. Like you said before, your top 2 of being up there as far as that group. But who kind of gives you the call? Like, hey, you're getting the Hall of Fame. Who lets you know that you're a part of the WWE Hall of Fame?
You know, I'm trying to remember who. I mean, I have people because I was an executive vice president of talent relations with the WWE, and I was there for about 8 years. So I have a lot of friends. You know, going back to you know, I still consider Vince McMahon a personal friend. Recently had a conversation with John Filippelli, Flip, who was he's the president of the Yes Network, and the Yes Network owns the New York Yankees, and the Yes Network airs all of the Yankee broadcasts in New York. And so I was surprised recently to get a call out of the blue from Flip, just reminiscing about old times and looking forward to a situation where, you know, at baseball season it's a given that we were going to hook up and go to a ball game, but now it's off season, and wanted to get with Flip and his wife Jenna, and that was one of the positive things about the experience of being up there with the WWE was meeting Flip, and he's very, very well connected in the television industry, and I consider him a close personal friend.
Now, as far as Vince, obviously being a friend, do you remember, was he the one maybe that gives you a call? Like, how do you find out? Maybe Vince tells you?
You know, you'd think that moment would be burned in my head, and to be honest with you, because I had been working with him, you know, on other things, and so it wasn't like I was not, you know, associated with any of the people there. You know, Bruce Pritchard and I had been friends going way back to when he, you know, was with Paul Bosch in Houston, and so that relationship goes way, way back. And of course, Bruce is now you know, a major player in the industry. And to be honest with you, I really don't remember exactly who it was. You know, Pat Patterson was very hands-on back then, and it may have been a conversation with Pat or with. I was also good friends with Terry Garvin, and I don't remember who actually, you know, called me and told me that you know, this is official, that it's going to happen, and it really was a very, very proud moment for me. I mean, I've got memorabilia up on the wall of the event. It was Barry and Arn and Tully and Rick, and of course Dusty was the one who came out and who was basically our across the ring nemesis throughout my career. He was the leader across the ring, challenging the Horsemen. And he was aligned with you know, with the Road Warriors and with Magnum TA and Jimmy Valiant, and so over the years I became very, very close to Dusty and his family, and just and of course I watched Cody grow up from being a young pup, and now he's a major player in our industry, and just I miss Dusty. I love the man. I really miss him.
You know, it's so interesting that he gets selected as the inductor for you guys. I mean, it was just perfect. And, you know, he's standing across you guys once again, but obviously in a different capacity. I just thought that was so cool and so great to have him. Was that your guys' decision to have him be the inductor? Or is that like, you know, maybe obvious that, okay, obviously Dusty's going to induct the Horseman? You know,
I don't know that, you know, it's not been that many years ago, but when you think about it, you know, looking to see who would be, you know, we were all close to each other. So apart from the Horseman group themselves, the obvious choice would have to have been the American Dream, and he was excited to do it, to acknowledge the fact that we had battled each other through all of those years, and had developed a mutual respect for each other, that when the bell rang, you know, nobody held anything back. We went full bore, And when the final bell ended, there was no lingering animosity, and I had some opportunities to, and it wasn't very often, to see Dusty on a social basis, but knowing him and his wife Michelle, and of course, like I say, I watched Cody grow up too.
I just love that kind
Dusty was a treasure. I mean, when I think of people that were treasures, I immediately think of like Roddy Piper, but Dusty is it's only one American dream, only one Dusty Rhodes.
That is for damn sure. That's so true. And with him being the inductor for the Horsemen is just so perfect. It's so cool. But the interesting thing to me is when you look at that, right, the Horsemen are going in. Very cool. I mean, excellent. Definitely deserved. Unbelievable. Possibly the greatest faction of all time. But one guy is really, to me, missing. No Ole Anderson. Do you know if he was asked, invited, turned it down? Do you know anything about Ole not being a part of that Hall of Fame class?
Ole, I have to go back to when I broke into the business. I started. I was born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey. I went to college in Pennsylvania, and then after college, I was working in Ohio, and became close to the to people in Pittsburgh that had a weekly television show, and Jim Grabmeyer, and it's I don't know where, as I think back, where the connection was with Dusty, but I'd been with him in Florida for 5 years. I actually was always, because of when I started full time in wrestling, I was months from my 28th birthday, so I was not a kid, and I realized at that point that if I was going to have any longevity in an industry that was my true passion. I love baseball, but professional wrestling was it for me, and to be surrounded with people like Dusty Rhodes, and I always regarded, as I've said before in other episodes, that Eddie Graham was probably the one person who had the greatest influence on me. He was regarded in the industry as a true psychological genius that understood the psychology of our business like no one else, and had such success in Florida with Jack Briscoe and Hiro Matsuda. It just that if you were from Florida and professional wrestling was mentioned, there were other parts of the country where if you said you were a professional wrestler, people would just maybe roll their eyes or not give you the respect that I think you deserved. But in Florida, the fact that you were a professional wrestler and were seen in the company of Eddie Graham and Hiro Matsuda and everybody connected with it, Coach John Heath in Sarasota, it was something that people did not make light of, and you were actually someone that people looked up to and were respected, and that made me really, really feel good, and to have heard that I had an opportunity to go down there and to be around Eddie Graham and to be under I call it being under the Eddie Graham learning tree. He was definitely the person that had greater influence on me than any other one individual. His understanding of the basic fundamentals of our business, psychology of the business, and in Florida, there are places in the country where if you said you were a professional wrestler, they would, that stuff I see on TV. Well, you would never make a statement like that in the presence of Eddie Graham in Florida. And he would have people that the stories of people that would look at TV and say, yeah, I want to be a wrestler. I want to be a TV star. And, he would give tryouts every now and then, and depending on the attitude of the people, they would get in the ring with somebody like John Foley, who, if you looked at John Foley, you would think, he doesn't look all that impressive. And I remember they would have Hiro Matsuda, and everybody knew his credentials, or Jack Briscoe, everybody knew his credentials. And usually when they would want to try out, they would come down, and Eddie Graham would have Jack Briscoe and Hiro Matsuda and John Foley. And they would say, well, you can get in the ring and kind of let's, get a little sense of, what you're capable and what you can do. And, you have your choice of who you want to have your workout with. Well, they all looked at Briscoe and they all looked at Matsuda and they thought, I don't think I want to get in the ring and take my chances with them. And they look at John Foley and said they immediately pick him. And John Foley was every bit as tough. He was from England, and I don't know of any wrestler that's ever come out of England and Great Britain that wasn't legitimately tough guy. They never make it over there unless they are legitimately tough. And John Foley, like I say, he wasn't real tall, and he didn't have that what you would consider to be a weightlifting wedge type body, with all the muscles. That wasn't him. He had a beard, and he was the kind of guy that you would look at it, and John Foley, and think, well, yeah, maybe I could whoop him, and they would get in the ring and work out with him, and he would twist them every way. But and he didn't go in the ring, and there's stories that when Hulk Hogan came around, and Hulk Hogan was a bass player in a rock band and wanted to be a wrestler, and came down, and I think it was Hiro Matsuda, in the ring, and I don't know if it was an attitude adjustment. I wasn't there, and as people tell the story, of course, the story changes, it gets embellished, but in line was that Hiro Matsuda broke his leg, and the story was, well, that's just the nature of the business, and to everybody's surprise, to get over a broken leg is a major injury, and so it was, maybe 6 months, 9 months, whatever it was, and all of a sudden one day, here he is back at the Sportatorium, and say I've healed, I've been training, and I want another go at it. Well, he immediately endeared himself to everyone as just have somebody that showed some guts and courage, and actually showed that this was something that he genuinely wanted. And so then everybody really, really wanted to help him, and of course the rest of the story is history. Hulk is probably the one individual that his name is synonymous with wrestling, even if it's casual wrestling fans.
There's no doubt about that. But kind of going back, all the way back to Ole for a second, he's not a part of the Four Horsemen Hall of Fame class. Do you find that kind of strange at all that he's not there with you guys? That it's the great group of the Four Horsemen, the one that everyone recognizes probably is the best worker rate-wise when you throw Barry in the group. But is that kind of weird to you, or like maybe a little off to you, like that Ole's not a part of it with you guys?
Well, if you could certainly surmise that, and you're, you could go down that road. But if you know Ole, it's something that would not be surprising. And it's not that that having that recognition would not have been important to Ole. And I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, he was a guy in the beginning when I started that he traveled a lot by himself because he was basically a loner. And I was 27 going on 28 years old when I broke in the business in the Carolinas, and Sandy Scott was there, Johnny Heidemann was there, some guys that were not young kids, and I was green, but I wasn't a kid. Like I say, I was 27 going on 28. And so I, out of respect for the business, which was genuine respect, kept my mouth shut, didn't say anything, would ask them what they want me to do, and in being humble and taking that approach without me realizing it, endeared me to the veterans. And they then respected me for my respect for the business and for my attitude. And so they really, really wanted to help me, and they did. Because you can't make it in this business, especially back then, without a lot of help. And like I say, I wasn't a kid, and I wrestled in college, and so I had some amateur experience. But I was certainly not a tough guy. I wouldn't consider myself an outstanding amateur, but I understood the fundamentals. And going back to when I first was hanging around wrestling, and an old timer, the original Zebra Kid, George Bolus, everybody asked the wrestler, I want to be a wrestler. Can you give me any advice? That's the age-old question. And George Bolus was one guy who said, well, he told me, he said, you need to do two things. He said, first of all, the wrestling business has been here forever, and it'll be here forever. And so there's not an urgency for you to, kick the door in. That my suggestion to you would be, first and foremost, is to get your education, because it is a physical endeavor. Things happen. It's possible, not because of neglect or carelessness, that the potential is there any given day that you could suffer a broken neck or something, and a career-ending injury. So learn the fundamentals, first of all. Learn how to, protect yourself. And it was great advice, because even though it's not the same as an amateur contest, you still apply the same thing. In other words, an amateur sitting there in the front row or ringside can tell by how you position yourself whether you have an awareness of balance and leverage, that you wouldn't put yourself in a position where somebody who understands those things would say, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, because if he was in a street fight, he would never act in that manner. And that's something was always in the back of your mind, that you treat the business with respect, almost like it was an athletic contest and almost a street fight mentality. And if you adhere those principles and bring that into whatever your persona is or whatever your style is, that you're going to be a better performer, because you do your matches. Somebody that's an amateur can watch and immediately have more respect for you, because it's obvious that you understand the fundamentals of amateur wrestling and incorporate that into your professional style.
Now, kind of getting back to just the Hall of Fame class in general of 2012, we mentioned obviously the Four Horsemen, you, Rick, Barry, Arn, Tully. That's the best group, I think. A lot of people would say with the Horsemen. We talked about Ole not being important.
Yeah, and I don't know that I mentioned, and I'm not trying to dance around giving you an answer with regard to Ole, because Ole was somebody who I made a lot of trips with Ole, and he studied the stock market, and he respected people who respected the business and didn't waste their money on fancy cars or going into the bars and trying to impress the ladies and spending money. And he valued the amount of the dollar, saved his money, and was very well respected. And he was legitimately a tough guy, and he could handle himself. And he just was somebody who I respected, became a friend of, and I consider him a friend to this day. Made a lot of trips with him, and it's like you'd make a ride with Ole, just the two of you in the car, and you might make a 200-mile trip and basically not say 10 words to each other on that whole trip, because that's how he was. He was like very, I don't know how to describe it. He was very, very unique.
Introverted.
Introverted. Yeah, there you go. But he also, would look at you and see where your head was, what your level of respect was, what your goals were, what you wanted. And if he saw that you had respect for the business, and then he would open the door for you to get closer to him, because he was a wealth of knowledge and somebody who could really help you. And like being 27, going on 28 years old, that was a big help to me. I'm not saying fast track my time in the business, but the old timers, if they have a choice of a couple of people where there's an opportunity, and they would look at you with a nod because you had shown that you have respect for the business and the people in it. So to this day, I consider Ole a great friend and a real credit to our business. And like you say, he's an introvert. He's a guy that keeps to himself, saved his money, and I am a very private person for the people that know me personally. It's something that I do not pick up the phone and have a circle of people that I would call with regularity just for no reason, just to call and say hello. It's just, I'm a very private person, and I don't. And every now and then, and it may be once a year, and it may be once a year and a half, I will just out of the blue call Ole and talk to Marcia, and she usually answers the phone. And Ole is had slowed down. I'm not talking out of turn. He was, really worked hard all those years, and basically was in a wheelchair to get around. And the last time I saw him, I was heading down to Atlanta and stopped by and had lunch with him and spent a few hours with him, and just someone who showed me great kindness and helped guide me early in my career, and something that I never forgot. And I don't think I could ever properly thank him for all he did for me.
I love that. Now, the other members of the class of the Hall of Fame that I just want to quickly mention them: Mil Mascaras, Ron Simmons, Yokozuna, Mike Tyson, which is a great one, and Edge. Shockingly, Edge, out of all those big, great names, is Edge. Not to say anything bad about Edge, but I mean, the Horseman, Ron Simmons, Mike Tyson, Yokozuna. Edge is the headliner. Kind of crazy, but nevertheless, I guess he's one of the more recent names. But not a bad class at all, huh? You got some pretty good legendary names in that class. Yeah,
if you look at it individually, and Mike Tyson, they don't got much tougher than Mike Tyson. And, Yokozuna, it would be hard to look at the names, and I have the program, and the center of the program I have mounted on my wall, and it's all the people that that you mentioned. That Ron Simmons, who was a tremendous amateur as a football player and a wrestler, and of course Edge too, and Mike Tyson. I don't get much tougher than him. And Mil Mascaras, along with El Santo, are the two, I think, greatest mask wrestlers ever in the history of our business.
It's a pretty damn good class, just as far as name power. Throw Mike Tyson, obviously more famous for boxing, but just to throw him in there with the Horsemen, that's star power. That was a loaded one that year for sure, and especially you just throw in some of the inductors like Dusty and that's just awesome. To kind of have that that happen. Just so cool, such a class. Do you remember anything specifically from Tyson? Was I know supposedly he was a big fan. Was he a big fan of the Horsemen? Did he say anything to you guys at all?
Yeah, in fact, at the arena, where we went out, they had different, they didn't have individual dressing rooms for everybody, but, I walked in the door and looking for a place to put my gear down, and I looked up and, there's Mike Tyson. And it's almost like thinking, this is his private dressing room. I think I might have turned like I was going to leave, and he said, "Hey, where are you going? Sit down. You're welcome to stay here." And so that, as I look back, was really special. And as the night went on, the parade of people, especially a lot of the baseball players, would come in, and they wanted to come in and meet Mike Tyson and come in and pay homage to him. He's a big star, big star, and yet a very, very down-to-earth guy, and really made the experience for me really, really special to be in that dressing room, which was was a good-sized room, but watching everybody that came down, and they all wanted to meet Mike Tyson, and came in, and he was gracious with everybody, and it's just like, talk about, being great to be a fly on the wall, to see that. Well, I was in the room, and he insisted that I stay there and dress with him. So it was really nice.
I just love when guys like his stature and being that big and that good of a sports star is a fan of pro wrestling, because it gives it credibility. Like, well, hey, Mike Tyson, one of the greatest athletes of all time, one of the greatest professional boxers of all time, loves professional wrestling. So I wouldn't say anything too bad about wrestling, because you got some big time, huge fans, and not to say anything bad about anybody that maybe doesn't respect the business, but a guy of that stature is showing respect to the business. I think gives it, or lends it a lot of credibility.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then throw in there Ron Simmons, too, great football player, one of the greatest college football players.
Super guy. And, of course, I have a ring from the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and then the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame moved from upstate New York to just north of Dallas in Texas, and it's still there. And I have been there and donated gear for display. And then meanwhile, Tony Villano, who was initially in the beginning aligned with the Boxing Hall of Fame in New York, and struck up a friendship with. Well, he was a commissioner, so I think the way it played out, if memory serves me correct, every now and then he would be assigned to go to an event, because there would be two commission representatives there. So he was assigned to a wrestling event, this was a whole new thing to him. I mean, he was not a wrestling fan as such, and whoever he was sitting with, he was in like a room. There was a hallway, and then there was a room on the other side. There were big glass doors, and at the back of it was where George Steele was dressing. And whoever was in there with Tony strike up a conversation and asked Tony, said, do you know who that is over there? And he said, no, I don't. He said, that's George the Animal Steele. He's, one of the huge stars of our business. Well, it ended up, Tony went over it and introduced himself, shook hands with him, and they struck it up right away. And I think George said, "What are you doing? What are you doing after?" He said, "I'd like to buy you a drink." And what do you drink? I drink scotch. Well, I drink scotch. And so the two of them got together after the event that night, and the story is that between the two of them, consumed a bottle of scotch, and it was the beginning of really a lifelong friendship. And so Tony Villano, like I say, had the Hall of Fame up there, and then he had other. He's got a big family. They're a very close-knit family, and they're big into construction projects in the state of New York. Highway things where they have overpasses with culverts that are major projects, and that's the kind of thing that his company was involved in. And of course, the thing eventually moved to Texas, and then I remained friends with Tony, and would go up there and see him every now and then. And then recently, Tony had retired from his construction business. He's done very well financially. He'll never have to have any benefit for Tony Villano. He's done well, and he's set for life. And he and Holly are great people. And anyway, he now is starting what they're calling the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, again based out of Albany, New York. And he contacted me and said, because before he didn't have a lot of connections in the wrestling business, and George Steele befriended him, and then he said, well, they would need help, and George recommended me because I just had known a lot of people in the business, and he said he's somebody that knows everybody, and in a positive way, and connected with everybody. So that was the beginning of that friendship, and so Tony contacted me that he's doing it, and once again, invited me to be on the board of directors, and which I've agreed to, and so there's been no formal announcement, so hopefully I haven't jumped the gun with what Tony's doing, but it's going to happen, and it's going to be once again in upstate New York, and if Tony's involved, everything is going to be first class, and I'm excited to once again being involved and to work with Tony and know that I'm going to see him on an ongoing basis.
How are you with paying attention to current WWE? Do you pay attention to current WWE? Have you followed the Hall of Fame as far as this year and who is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, or you pay no attention to really current WWE?
If I see something, like on on the internet, about who's going to be, somebody will post something where who's going to be in this year, and I will, but I don't religiously follow the program. If I go around and I see it, I'll stop and watch. And I don't want to create the wrong impression that I am somehow not a fan of the current product. That would be nothing could be further from the truth. But it's just as I'm 77 years old, and I've got family and a lot of things, and I just I every now and then will get invited to go to a independent show to appear as a guest where they advertise I'm going to be there and be available for a signing and to take pictures, and it's nice to go back because the fans will come up and seem genuinely happy to see me and want some memento of the thing, be it a picture or what, and then it gives me a chance. I sit and I watch all the matches and get to see what the current product looks like.
So this year, going into the Hall of Fame, well, actually technically next year, 2020, but the next Hall of Fame class, Dave Bautista, and then also the NWO, who you know very, very well. So it's Hulk Hogan for the second time in the Hall of Fame, Scott Hall, second time Hall of Fame, Kevin Nash, second time Hall of Fame, and Sean Waltman, second time Hall of Fame. But the thing that interested me to ask you to see if you paid attention to it is no Eric Bischoff, the guy who created the NWO, is not being invited back. And recently, he was working for WWE and was recently fired by WWE. And, that's probably a big reason why they're not putting him in or whatever. But what do you kind of think? Do you think that Bischoff should have been included in the NWO going to the Hall of Fame? It's kind of weird that the guy that created it isn't going in.
That's interesting. I may have seen something in passing, and I don't know if there's more to the story that's not there. But everybody that's in the group is certainly worthy, with Hall and Nash and Sean Waltman. Those are all those guys, and I guess you could make certainly make the case that if Eric Bischoff was included, I would certainly have no issue with it, and would think that at the same time, if he's not there, it wouldn't in any way, diminish the honor for everybody else.
Right. I was just curious because it's just so interesting that if a guy can kind of create the group, it kind of almost brought me back to the old thing, but with Eric, when a guy creates the group, he's not a part of the NWO. It's just going into the Hall of Fame. That's weird. Do you kind of think that some of this stuff is political?
I think that the grouping it's kind of like the Horseman thing was a spontaneous thing that we had guys who, with Flair and with Ole and with Arn and with Tully and myself, we were guys that all really genuinely enjoyed being around each other. And if you ever watched a group interview, you could sense that there was never any tension, or if there was an interview wasn't so lengthy that everybody got a chance to speak, that if somebody didn't speak that was there, that it was obvious that they would have a look on their face. None of that existed. It was a very, very, and I think that's part of why it was so successful and so great, is that you had a group of individuals that were all at the top of their game. Luger might be the only one that you could say, okay, Luger came out of Florida and he got the rub that kind of elevated him, but everybody else was already there and at the top of their game. And so that doesn't, it doesn't surprise me. And it wasn't like, I never think of it of Eric Bischoff being the creator putting it together. Eric Bischoff did a lot of positive things for the business. But I think the Horseman thing was something that was a spontaneous thing that was already there, and really it was Arn that coined the name.
When people say greatest stable, greatest faction, those two always come up. It's NWO, Four Horsemen. I pretty much hear that religiously from all the fans. They either, maybe some of the old school fans say Four Horsemen, or some of the true blue wrestling fans just say the Horsemen. But a lot of fans say the NWO. What is the best faction? I think I kind of know the answer, but what do you think is the greatest faction? Is it the NWO or the Four Horsemen?
Well, I'm a little bit prejudiced, but I would definitely say, the Horsemen, and it's reinforced anytime that I, am asked to appear at an independent show or a fan fest somewhere. The fans come up, and the association with the Four Horsemen, it's just synonymous with all of us, and it was just something that happened. It was something that really the fans created and ran with, and we were all comfortable. It wasn't important. Even like you would say, okay, well, Ric Flair was the world champion, and he was kind of the standard bearer, but Rick never positioned himself to be out front and in the spotlight. That he was comfortable with with being part of the group, and the fact that he was the world champion and spoke for itself, but it didn't define what the Four Horsemen were.
If you were a booker and you were booking, let's say, Hogan, Hall, Nash, Waltman versus Flair, Arn, Tully, Barry, who would you think? Who's the face? Who's the heel? Like, how would you book that? Because that's a fantasy match. In anybody's book, that would be one of the greatest.
Yeah, I'm always one who thinks, okay, if you're able to get those people in the same building at the same time for the one event, I think it's a mistake to try and position one group or the other as somebody that's the fan favorite and the other guys are the villains. I think the personas and everything, it speaks for themselves, and it's like, just let the match happen. And the fans and and it's funny, you might take that match to 4 or 5 different arenas, all 100, 200 miles apart, and get different reactions at different nights from different audiences.
True.
Like at one point, and I think you can understand what I'm trying to say. That you go and you go to one town and the fans are cheering us and kind of half booing them, and then you go to another town and you're cheering Hulk and kind of booing us. But it's like, and I always said that they love to hate the Horsemen. They really did. That yes, we would go out with a Rock and Roll Express and we would do terrible things, but they knew it was going to be an entertaining match. And the best way I can describe it is to say, well, they love to hate us, and they might boo, but at the same time they were cheering. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just that's how it was. That I guess it's like the Yankees and Red Sox. If you go to Boston, they're cheering the Red Sox and booing the Yankees. You go to Yankee Stadium, they're cheering the Yankees and booing the Red Sox. And then if you go to somewhere in between, you don't know who that particular audience that night is more fond of.
That is so true. That's kind of an excellent comparison too. Yeah.
The bottom line is that no matter where we went, there was a demand for people to buy tickets to want to see us, and that's really the bottom line. And I'm just thankful that I was there during that era and a part of it.
Love it. And thinking about this time, and obviously we're talking about really the Horsemen getting into the Hall of Fame, obviously tied in with the NWO getting this year, but really the Horsemen getting into the Hall of Fame back in 2012 kind of is a big honor. Do you think that to some people that honor doesn't mean as much? Like, you know what I mean? Like with the WWE Hall of Fame, some people say it's a big deal, some people say it's not a big deal. Like, what do you think? That's got to be somewhat of a pretty big honor if you're being recognized by the biggest company.
Oh, I definitely say so. I definitely think so. And it's like Vince McMahon created a brand with the WWE, and it's really the one and only brand that is truly global in scope. They go all over the world, and this is back before cable television and whatever that now it's made the world a lot smaller. But back in the day, we had recognition globally everywhere, and that's pretty nice because that really, if you ever sit and look back and try to get a sense of the impact of your career, it validates for me what a big deal we were, and it was because it's something that the fans either see it, recognize it, and embrace it, or they don't, and you can't have like a marketing campaign. Well, I'm going to take these guys and I'm going to put them out front and I'm going to really make them fan favorites. And the wrestling business is the one industry where the fans really dictate, and you can't try and position things in such a way that you're trying to achieve an end result that you want if it's not what the fans want.
Absolutely. Love it. And I think that's a kind of a perfect stopping point and kind of end the conversation about the 2012 Hall of Fame, which the Horsemen were obviously a huge part of, and Mike Tyson and Edge, Mil Mascara, Yokozuna, Ron Simmons, but I think the Horsemen, to me, really headlined that event for sure.
And what was special, too, was that they, Pat and came around, and we all had rings, and they came to us first and say, well, here's your, we want you to try your ring on ahead of time, and if it doesn't fit right, we're going to, if it fits perfect and you want to just take it with you, fine, and if it needs to be adjusted, we want to do that so that you can, legitimately keep it and be proud of it and wear it with pride. And Vince wanted to personally present the rings to each of us individually. And I remember he had a setup with a backdrop and a camera and a video camera, and we were all lined up out in the hallway, and I think Rick went first, and went in, and Vince, made the presentation of here's your ring, and try it on, and videotaped it, and then whoever it was went over, and the next guy came in until we were all in there, and then we did a group picture, and I have on my wall that I probably look at it 1,000 times. There was a group photo that day up on the stage because it had like a red carpet, and Dusty is in it, Mike Tyson is in it, Shawn Michaels is in it, Triple H is in it, and then there is another picture with the Horsemen, with the WWE wallpaper behind. And as I look at the picture, Rick is on the far right, Barry is next, then Vince, then myself, then Tully, and then Arn. And we're all holding up the symbol of excellence, and Vince is as well. And
wow. Nice.
I get goosebumps just looking at that picture, and then there's a picture on, when we were actually all out on the stage with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and it just was it was an incredible night and an incredible honor, and then to go out in front of the arena the next day, the football stadium with 65,000 people there, and then they brought us all out at one point and introduced all of us, and Howard Finkel was down in the middle of the stadium, and we were up at one end, and they had this big red carpet with stars, and one by one they brought us all out, and just the response of those people was it validates everything. I can't think of, it was a very emotional moment, and you look at our business and you think, well, but the fans are the ultimate judge and jury. They are the ones that put you in a position where you're looked upon as someone special in the whole history of our business. And so you're talking about this is 88, 98, 08, 18. You're talking about over 30 years, and they're still talking about us. And we go somewhere 30 years later, and people remember those moments and remember us. And I'll have I'll have people come up, and there's maybe a kid that's 8, 10 years old, and his father is with him, and he wants his son to be able to shake my hand and look at the rings and being able to introduce him, maybe take a picture. And I can't count the number of times that the father will say to his son, because they're not on TV every week, you don't maybe understand today what the significance of this is, but when I was your age, these guys were it. They were the big deal. And I just, a father wants his son to have had that same moment. It means as much for the father as anything, because, the son will look up and see that smile on the father's face and know that it's a special moment for him.